Namaste, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Shri Matri Namaha. Welcome to everyone. Thank you to Team Mangaluru Literature Festival for accommodating this very thoughtful panel discussion on civilization narratives, which I personally believe is the need of today, as well as something that we as a nation should be doing at every possible opportunity in trying to return to our roots. And that brings me to my first question to Nitin Sridhar, who is a very prolific author, especially in the area of Hindu practices, right from his path-breaking work on menstruation to his other works on Upanishads and the true understanding of Hindu practices. So Nitin, if we have to, begin with the opening remarks about what, according to you, is a civilizational narrative. So do we know what a civilizational narrative means?
Thank you, Sai. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. I think if we can start with the etymology of the word construct itself. We have two words here, civilization and narrative. So narrative is pretty straightforward. It's our story. Like you say, history is his story, the story of man. We have to think about story of Hindu Dharma. So story of we as Hindus, we as Sanatana Dharmis, we as the inheritors of this land, of this culture, of this civilization as a whole. So when I think of the term civilization, I think what comes to my mind is a sum total of everything, a most comprehensive way we can understand. So it is our story, not just our story in the sense of history, in the sense of some facts from the history, but in the sense of a comprehensive knowledge about who we are actually. That is the first question, and I answer that we are not just somebody who are here today, right here and now, but we are a civilization who have been here always, all the time. We are the inheritors of Arsha Dharma, we are the inheritors of the Rishis, the knowledge that has given to us by the Rishis. We are the one who have discovered the Veda, the eternal knowledge. Our tradition starts with Ishvara himself, be it in the form of Dakshinamurti, be it in the form of Narayana, however you see it, all our knowledge systems. So when I think about our civilization narrative, the first thing that comes to mind is knowledge. And as the Upanishads say, Nahi Jnanena Sadrusham Iti Parvitram Uchyate. There is nothing as pure as knowledge. And if there is one thing that can define us is the importance to knowledge given. And all our knowledge systems, you take any, be it Vedanta, be it Yoga, be it science, anything, it is either attributed to a Rishi or attributed to ultimately to Bhagavan. It always starts with Bhagavan. For example, in the Guru Parampara Stotram of Vedanta tradition, Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharyam Madhyamam. So it starts with Sadashiva. Similarly, all other paramparas, I am sure it always starts with Ishvara. So when I think about civilization narrative, what I have in mind is, it is our story told by us based on our own perspective, our own drishti, our own categories, our own ways of thinking, worldview, our darshana. So we do not have philosophy, we have darshana. We have Vedanta darshana, we have Sankhya darshana, many others. Darshana means a worldview. It is an entry into knowledge of the world, entry into how to perceive the world. So civilization narrative is all about this, how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive the world, how we perceive the past and the future and the present and the eternal truth, eternal reality, how we connect everything to eternal reality. And ours is a eternal civilization because we are Sanatana Dharma, and Dharma is always Sanatana. Dharma cannot be temporary. Dharma cannot be something which changes with changing times and tides and all. Dharma has to be Sanatana, only then it is Dharma. Yeah. So we are Sanatana Dharma. We do not have a founder because anything that has a beginning must end. That is the law of nature. Only that which does not have a beginning will never have an end. So when I say, again, to come back to the question about civilization and narrative, I see that our civilization narrative has to be has to fulfill certain conditions. It is that it has to embed within itself this vision of eternal, this vision of the absolute reality. We call it Brahman, we call it Shakti, however we call it. We have to anchor everything, every story to that reality, underlying things. Two, it has to be relevant to us here and now. See, our knowledge systems is not tombs of history. It's not the tombs of past. Today we want to make that. All our textual tradition are nowadays the Indological approach to them is to study what happened 2000 years ago. This text was composed in 200 years back or 1000 years back, or what kind of political or socio-economic situations gave rise to text. See, all these first of all, they are speculative. I'm not saying they are completely useless, but they are speculative, and they are not really relevant, because that is not our way to approach them. Our way to approach the knowledge, our way to approach our past is to make them relevant here and now. As I think in one of the Kannada discussion that was happening upstairs, somebody made a point about how Ramayana story for us is how it is relevant today. How they lived is what is relevant today. It does not matter in which year Rama lived. We have an answer to that also. We have an answer. We are not ahistorical. We choose to tell history in such a way that it is relevant today. See, we have the notion of Chaturyuga, we have the notion of Kalpa. There is no other culture which has this notion of huge Kalpas.
So that cyclical view of Hinduism makes what we think as past as our past, present, as well as future. So there will be a Ramayana in future, there would be a Mahabharata in future, and yes, I love that point of yours where you say we are not isolated from our past or our future, and we belong to that kind of continuum that is eternal. And Nitin brought a very interesting term, that is the Arsha Vijnana or Arsha Vangmoolam, right? It's about looking at our history as well as what we treat as our past with our own perspective, that is our drishti. And Ami, you have worked on dispelling the myths around our itihasa, starting with your path-breaking book on Mahabharata. It's called Unraveling the Mahabharata. I would not recommend any other book more than that. If you actually want to know the differences that between the story that we know as Mahabharata from popular sources versus what is actually written in the Vyasa Mahabharata. So do check out her book when you get an opportunity. So Ami, so what has been your experience in exploring the Arsha view of Mahabharata, the way Veda Vyasa, Bhagwan Vyasa wanted us to see? And Bhagwan Vyasa belongs to that we were talking about. I think there is another version of Guru Parampara Stotra which comes as Narayana Samarambham Vyasa Shankara Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. And so Vyasa happens to be one of our first gurus after Shiva and Vishnu.
Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ ಮಂಗಳೂರು. ನಮ್ಮನ್ನೇ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಕರೆಯುವುದಕ್ಕೆ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. Much thanks Saiswaroopa ji first for inviting me here and also talking about the book. Thank you so much. So before I go into the Arsh view of how Ved Vyas ji wanted us to understand Mahabharata, I'll just add a couple of things to what Nitin ji said, right? Why is civilizational narrative important in the first place? He already explained it's how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive our past, how we perceive our future. That is definitely important. But why is it important that we have our own narrative to be perceived by ourselves and by others? Yeah, I'll tell you a story. Very simple. It's not about right or wrong, but how civilizational narratives matter in today's context. Is the voice echoing? No, right? Okay. So I was working in this company where I had a Chinese colleague, and there was something going on between China and Hong Kong at that point in time, and it was something very, very China and Korea at that point in time. Something very simple. Some boat had turned over, and these Chinese guys couldn't help saying कि अरे कोरिया में कुछ नहीं है. They can't even take care of the boats or something of that sort. Yeah. So one of my colleagues was a Korean, the other one was a Chinese, and we were in Chennai. We were on a trip to visit our Indian factory. And some discussion happened, and this Korean guy started taunting the Chinese person. And it was a fun chat. So the Chinese person was like, yeah, this is how we are. Very, very cool about the taunts. Yeah, this is what we are. And she said, China has always been a superpower, and it will continue to be a superpower. So the Korean guy was essentially saying China doesn't have good relations with anybody. Yeah, and China fights with every neighbor of its. And this person was like, we are not fighting, we are only rightly claiming what is ours. Yeah, and we need to do whatever we need to do for it. So I said, you know what, in today's world, Pakistan at one point in time was a part of India. Now if we go and attack Pakistan and claim it back, what would it say today? Now this is exactly what you've done to Tibet, right? So what moral high ground are you claiming? And this lady, again, very, very coolly, she tells me, 700 years ago, Tibet was a part of China. It was, so we always had the right over Tibet, and we are only claiming it back. Why should anybody have a problem with that? Yeah. Now you see what this is, a very simple example. People would think of it as politics. But if you really dig deeper, it is a civilizational narrative that China has set for itself. It says we were great, we are going to be great, whatever was ours, we take it back. This is how every Chinese who has studied in China sees herself or himself. This is how they become assertive in the world to say, yes, this is what we are and we have the right to do what we are doing, right? Itna bada COVID ho gaya, you see the response of the world. When the COVID happened, what did they say? Arey, hug a Chinese. I mean, come on, hug a Chinese when COVID was going on. Why? Because Chinese were like, no, we are not at fault, right? That assertiveness comes from how you define yourself, how we define ourselves. So
here we are giving explanations for simply staying neutral between Ukraine and Russia, which we have nothing to do with, absolutely nothing to do with, and we are somehow feeling we are responsible to take a stance. And now, why should we?
I was actually coming to that. Why is that happening? So a civilizational narrative also defines how do you set the terms of engagement with the world around you, right? How do you set the terms of engagement with the world around you? What did we do? We said after independence, we started to make a narrative about ourselves. We said we are non-aligned, right? Ahimsa paramo dharma, and we are non-aligned. The world can do whatever, we will sit and give gyan to everybody. That is what Jai Shankar said in the parliament the other day, that we have to look at our interests. So we are trying to change that. But essentially, what we said, we are non-aligned. So we will not look at our interests whatsoever. The Western powers can go do whatever they do. They can continue to buy petrol from Russia. But India has to take a stand. Why? Because India has to be non-aligned. India has to be on the right side of history. Who defined these terms of conditions, right? We failed to have our own grand civilizational narrative, and the world imposed it on us. Let's take one more example before I go into Mahabharata, because this is a civilizational narrative topic. We talk about the Aryan invasion theory, right? The Aryan invasion theory. What really is the Aryan invasion theory? Why do we have it? Aryan invasion theory is the Germans trying to create a grand narrative for themselves that was imposed on us, that they were the Aryans because they did not have colonies like the Britishers or the French, right? So they wanted to impose, they wanted to feel good about themselves that we had something in the past. We were the Aryans, we had the Vedas, we had the Sanskrit, all the Gyan that you see has come from us. They were defining that grand narrative, and because we were colonized and under slavery at that point, we assumed it. And that mindset continued even today, right? Sorry, now going to the question which Saiswaroopa ji you asked. It's actually very important also from the civilizational perspective. Today, how do we see Mahabharata? Whenever we talk of Mahabharata, we think of it as a Draupadi ke saath atyachar hua, women have always been subjugated, India has always been patriarchal. That is one view we have of ourselves. Second, Karna Bichara, always one of the greatest warriors, had all the skills in the world. However, India, casteist, we see the problems today, caste problems. Hence, Mahabharata was casteist. Going now, of course, we see our past, we define ourselves. So we created a narrative now saying that we are a casteist society. We linked it back to Mahabharata or our Shastra, saying that all this casteism, this oppression comes from our past. Hence, Mahabharata is casteist. Then what did we do? We got the hero from, we got somebody who we defined as a hero now, Karna. Uske saath caste atyachar hua. Right? And we have always been a casteist society. And hence, unlike that Chinese person who's saying this is all ours and we'll claim it back, as soon as an Indian talks to a Firang or anybody outside, they start becoming apologetic. Yeah, we have problems in India. Yeah, caste problem. Yeah, sati. Every time. Why are we so apologetic? Because we don't know our past. Now, what did Ved Vyasji want us to learn from Mahabharata? That is what the Itihas definition will tell us. History and Itihas. Itihas says, Dharma Artha Kama Mokshanam Upadesham Samanvitam Purva Vruttam Kathayuktam Itihasam Prachakshate. Purva Vruttam Kathayuktam. Something that has happened in the past and has been narrated in a form of a story. Why? Dharma Artha Kama Mokshanam Upadesham Samanvitam. So that we learn how to live our lives in accordance with the four Purushartha of Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. When we define a civilizational narrative for India, we cannot ignore the Purusharthas. That is one aspect. But the thing is, we had to learn from our past so that we can improve our lives today. So what Ved Vyasji wanted us to learn from all these characters? Karna, one, he was not a low caste, so to say, right? He was not discriminated or anything. That's a different issue altogether, which we'll talk about Mahabharata myths if ever. This whole caste narrative also, the way it has been projected in the past was not there. It was very simple. For Ved Vyasji, Itihas was like a case study. We get Gnan from many places, from Dharma Shastras, we get Gnan from Vedas, right? But how do we live that Gnan in life? In MBA, जब हम करते हैं, we read case studies, right? What action did somebody do? What was the implication of that action? Itihas is nothing but that. Itihas is a case study where we look at our ancestors and say what did they do and what was the outcome of that. So Ved Vyasji wanted to underline that and say that this is, if you behave in a certain manner, this is the outcome you will have to face. And that is why in the end, taking the Karna example, when Karna's Rath went down, Karna started saying, oh, Dharma is useless. Why is Dharma useless? Because when we need Dharma, Dharma doesn't stand for us. And Krishna says, Dharma, you think of Dharma now. After being adharmi all your life, अब तुमको धर्म का याद आता है. धर्मो रक्षति रक्षितः, धर्म एव हतो हन्ति, धर्मो रक्षति रक्षितः. This is the underlying message of Mahabharata which Ved Vyasji wanted to give us. And Dharma is the essential factor, the underlying theme on which a civilizational narrative of India has to be based on, which we cannot. And if we base it on Dharma, we will look at ourselves in a very different way. We will look at policies in a different way. We will look at our engagement with the world in a very different way. So I'll stop here. Maybe I'll get a chance to explain the Dharma of Mahabharata.
Yes, wonderful points put forth by Ami, and when she brought out the point on the Aryan invasion theory, that gave me a quick memory of my research I was doing for my novel Avishi. It's based on the story of Vishpala, queen in the Rigvedic era, who was fitted a prosthetic leg. And that's a scientific breakthrough, because it's not just a miracle of gods, because if it has to be a miracle, it would have been they would have just given her leg back, right? But the metallic leg ayasa is mentioned in the Rigveda, which means that the idea for prosthesis also came from the Rigveda, as acknowledged by many Western institutions, something which we fail to recognize ourselves. But in setting that story, I began to research this Aryan invasion, or what is it, out of India theory and Aryan invasion theory, and then I wanted to be really unbiased then, because the world building has to be honest, and I didn't want to be jingoistic. And then what I discovered as a scientific proofs of Aryan invasion theory is the actual archaeological proofs, right, which they go back by some German historian who discovered 27 skeletons at the place of this Harappa or Mohenjo-daro. These 27 skeletons became the basis of an invasion, right? And then they add stuff like no house here had weapons. Which house in that household in that era would not have weapons? Even if they are totally pacifist and friendly, they would have basic weapons at least to cut the vegetables and cut the meat or hunt or protect themselves. Which means that actually houses without weapons means that people have gone somewhere. It's not that he puts the whole blame of genocide on Indra, saying these 27 skeletons are the witness for the genocide of natives that happened in the hands of Aryans. So that is how scientific the Aryan invasion theory is. It's totally one of the most unscientific historical theories. But thank you for bringing that, Ami. So, Nitin, Ami ended at a very interesting point about Dharma, and you had also mentioned about Dharma being eternal and not. But is there an evolutionary Dharma, or is there a transcendental Dharma? Is there does Dharma change or evolve, or does it remain static? And there is a never-ending debate about this by people who actually respect Dharma from somewhere from their hearts, and we'll come to the people who don't respect the word Dharma. But within the sphere that respects Dharma itself, there is a never-ending debate, and your views on that.
Okay, that's an interesting question. But before I answer, just a few more points I wanted to add to the perspective Ami added. She mentioned about how Purushartha is very important, and Dharma is to be located within that. But I say that if we are to today construct our grand civilization narratives, then there are three frameworks, three categories which are inevitably we have to use it, otherwise it will not be our civilization narrative. One is of course the Purushartha framework, which gives meaning to our life, our world, to the whole thing that we are doing. And the other is the notion of Yuga and Kalpa cycle, which locates us in time, in the realm of time. And finally, the third is the Varnashrama Dharma, because it is what it is what locates us in a socio-political sense, and it is what actually, as I said, within the Purushartha, the Dharma comes, and within the Dharma there is Samanya Dharma and there is Vishesha Dharma. And the Varnashrama Dharma comes under Vishesha Dharma. So this is how everything is connected. So now coming to the question of Dharma itself. What is Dharma? I mean, we all use the term very, very loosely today that I am dharmic. Nobody wants to be called as adharmi. Nobody likes to be called as adharma. But nobody wants to actually live a dharmic life at all, because we feel comfortable defining what is Dharma for ourselves. But can we really define Dharma for ourselves? Because even a criminal such as a thief or a murderer or even a rapist can say that he is right because he wanted to do it. In his definition, he is Dharma. So we as an individual cannot be the basis of defining Dharma. And the actions themselves do not come to us and say that, look, I am a dharmic action, please perform me. They don't do. And this is actually what I am saying is a quote from Apastamba Dharma Sutra, where the Apastamba Rishi says that actions do not come and tell you that they are dharma or adharma. And the term dharma is always about actions in the human context. So when we speak about dharma, it has a very wide meaning. But very quickly I'll go through some important aspects, because this is important, people don't realize this. Dharma, of course, comes from the dhatu dhru, which means to uphold, to sustain, to support. And we have scriptural Shastri quotations from the Shruti, the Upanishads and Mahabharata and all, which way says Dharayate iti dharma, that which upholds. Dharma, the dharma is that which upholds all prajas, all the living beings everywhere in the universe. That is what is dharma. So what does this upholding means in a human context? Then we have the Vaisheshika Sutra, which says that dharma is that which gives us, which helps us to attain two things: Abhyudaya, Nishreyasa. In Parashara Madhaviya, the great sage Swami Vidyaranya, who is the behind the Vijayanagara Empire, he writes that dharma is that which is hitam. The Parashara Smriti itself says dharma is hitam, and he explains why dharma is hitam. Hitam means beneficial, because it gives three things. One, it helps us to attain the goals of artha and kama and everything of the material nature in this world, ihaloka. And then it helps us to attain paraloka, the goals in paraloka, namely swarga. And third, it helps us to nishreyasa, abhyudaya nishreyasa. Nishreyasa means it takes us towards moksha by giving chitta shuddhi. So when we speak about dharma, it is not just some ethical action, it is not just about right and wrong. It has a proper implication. It means dharma is an action which gives rise to what is called as punya. Punya is the adrushta phala, the invisible thing, the karmic merit, if I have to translate it. And as a result of this punya or karmic merit, we will be able to, that results in it fructifies into sukha, happiness, swarga, heaven, and chitta shuddhi, purity of mind, which leads to moksha. The opposite is adharma, an action which gives rise to papam, karmic demerit, which results in dukkha, sorrow, it may be in this life or in next life, and it leads to naraka, which is the realms wherein suffering, we face the punishments for our actions, and then it leads to punarjanma again and again, and in more bondage to samsara. So this is the real implication of dharma. When we say that this action is dharma, it has to give rise to all these things. I cannot say this action will lead to swarga because swarga is not visible to me. It is atindriya, beyond my perception, beyond the reach of my senses. Hence it is called atindriya. So this definition is very clear that just because social or political changes or economic changes happening in the society, the action which leads to swarga will not change. How will it change? If you do dhanam, it leads to swarga. If you do dhanam is called as dharmic activity, or yajna is called as dharmic activity, tapasya is called as dharmic activity, practicing satya is called as dharmic activity. It does not change just because there is a change in circumstances, there is a political change, there is a economic change, or today we have adopted Western modernity as our everyday life. It's just like a murderer cannot say that I was not aware of the law, therefore I should not be punished. Similarly, we cannot say that I have changed my value system, therefore dharma has to be redefined. Our shastras have to be rewritten. That is not how it works. We may write 100 texts today, but that does not make them a smriti. The smritis were written by rishis based on Veda. So when we speak about, so that is why I say, because dharma is eternal, the essential principles of dharma are eternal. The essential basis of dharma is eternal. However, what changes is its applications, which is dependent upon desha, kala, etc. So all these temporal conditions are taken care into when you are applying it. For example, within the Dharma Shastra, for example, one of the most important smriti is Manu Dharma Shastra or Manu Smriti. Unfortunately, most abused today. But Manu Smriti is very clear. It simply does not give some 10 commandments like the Christian Bible. Do this, do that. No. It speaks about, it divides dharma into two segments. One is Samanya Dharma, which is universal ethical principles available and applicable to all humanity. It does not differentiate between gender or locality or nationality. Everybody is included. Everybody who practices Samanya Dharma, what is Samanya Dharma? It is Ahimsa, Satyam, Asteyam, Shaucham, Indriya, Nigram. That is what Manusmriti says. And other Smritis add more aspects to it, including Bhakti and Daya and other things. So these are all ethical principles which anybody can practice and attain highest shreyas, that is both abhyudaya and nishreyasa, overall well-being here and other loka and towards moksha. But it also gives special duties which are context specific, which are people specific, which changes from person to person, community to community. These are called as Vishesha Dharma. We all know about Varna Ashrama Dharma, that is most popular, but that is not the only Vishesha Dharma. What is Vishesha Dharma? Vishesha Dharma of a father, that is, as a father, the duty is very different from a Putra Dharma of a son or a daughter, or Putri Dharma as a daughter. Similarly, Vishesha Dharma of a Raja is different from Vishesha Dharma of a Praja. Similarly, there is a change in Dharma in the Yuga also. In the Satya Yuga, Tapasya was the main Dharma, but in Kali Yuga, Dana and Bhakti is main. That does not mean that if you perform Tapasya today, you will not get result. What it simply means that we are simply incapable of doing that intense Tapasya. Most of us. There are exceptions, of course. So these kind of contextualization already given. Similarly, the ashrama system, and this ashrama system has to be understood within Varna system. It cannot be isolated from it. So there is a Brahmana Dharma, there is a Kshatriya Dharma, there is a Vaishya Dharma, there is a Shudra Dharma, there is a Panchama Dharma. So many different types of Dharma for different people, for different functions, for different purposes, different competencies. All these are given. So you see, within the textual tradition itself, so many divisions, so many classifications have been made to contextualize the teachings to different situations, different people, different needs of the society. Further contextualization can be done at an individual level. What Manusmriti says, he says that there are 4 sources of Dharma or 4 pramanas. See, when we say about Dharma, I already mentioned, I and you cannot decide it. So how will we know what is Dharma? There are only one way to know. There is only one pramana. Pramana means source of knowledge. Like for example, in Hindu darshanas, 6 sources of knowledge are accepted. Pratyaksha, Anumana, etc., which is direct perception, inference, comparison, analogy, and all those things. But they cannot tell us what is Dharma, because it is beyond our senses. Only Shabda Pramana can reveal it. Shabda Pramana is the source of knowledge which is in the form of words and sentences. And that is the most independent, the highest Shabda Pramana is Veda. Vedo Akhilam Dharma Moolam, says Manusmriti. That is, Akhila Veda is the ultimate source of Dharma. And dependent upon Dharma is other sources such as Smritis of Manu, Parashara, and as well as Itihasa Puranas written by Valmiki, Vyasa and all. So this is the whole tree. So from this we know, from these texts, we understand what is Dharma, what is Adharma, and they are given in the form of Vidhi and Nisheda. Vidhi is a statement which says, if you do this, you will get this phala. Swarga kamo yajeta, says the Veda. If you want to attain Swarga, do this yagya. Simple connection between karma and karma phala. See, it is not a question of belief at all. I believe or not does not matter. Basically it is revealing a knowledge that you do karma, you do yagya, you go to Swarga. You do murder, you go to Narka. It is simple like that. It is simply revealing knowledge. So the purpose of our Shastra, we are a Shastric based Dharma. Contrary to what many people now think, that anything goes, we are a way of life, anything goes. And when we try to say that, no, we have a Shastra based Dharma, we say, no, don't Abrahamize it. Actually, by trying to define ourselves in opposition to Abrahamics, we are Abrahamizing it. We should define ourselves on our own basis, and we are a Shastra-based civilization. Shastra is at the core of it. But this Shastra is not a biblical commandment. It is not a law. It is a source of knowledge. It reveals knowledge. Look, you do yagya, you attain Swarga. You do this, you attain this. Whether we want to do it, whether we will do it is up to us ultimately, because we have the responsibility to do right by us. Because if we want Sukham, Swargam, Moksham, we have to do Dharma. If we want just Artha and Kama and enjoy in this life, suffer in, or if you believe that I only live once, then you go ahead and do whatever you want, and then you will face the result nevertheless. So in this way, Dharma is eternal. Dharma, essential principles of Dharma are eternal. If it was not so, then all, as people say, all these texts have become outdated. Let us write a new Smriti, as if everybody can write a Smriti. Let us assume that people can write a Smriti. Then what does it imply? that today we have a rishis who can see the past, present and future and actually write it. Do we really have a rishi like that? I am not a rishi. Even our great acharyas like Shingere Acharya, Kanchi Paramacharya, they have refused to write a new Smriti because they say that they are not competent enough. Just imagine the greatest acharyas of our time who have entire knowledge, who has the great knowledge, 100,000 times more than us, who say they are not competent to write Smriti. Then can any leftist or any Hindutvaite or anybody on our camp or their camp, anybody can write a Smriti?
So I think there Veda Vyasa comes to our rescue again. We obviously the tapasya or the sadhana that is required to rewrite a smriti is something beyond the reach of most of us.
I want to make another point. This again goes back to what Ami said. She said about Mahabharata giving about life lessons and how to what actions lead to what. What I have realized is, I may convert this into thesis maybe 20 years down the line, I don't know. Mahabharata is a running commentary, a practical commentary on Manusmriti and other Dharma Shastras. What the Dharma Shastras say, you do this, you get this, or you don't do this, it puts it into test. It demonstrates through examples.
Nitin, I was about to ask Ami to give us that demo about how Dharma is left to interpretation, and people of Mahabharata have made those choices for a larger cause, and they have sacrificed their self-interest, and which is why we call them heroes even 4,000, 5,000, 7,000, wherever we put the Mahabharata years after they lived. They remain those case studies, as you said. So give us an example about how individuals have interpreted dharma for a larger cause. It's not the convenient, interpretation like, okay, I can get up 2 hours after sunrise because something.
So thank you for this, and I'll continue from where Nitin started actually. So he said dharma dhru, to uphold, to sustain. So in Mahabharata we have definition of dharma in many places, but there's one which comes from the mouth of Krishna, which I want to say, and this is the same thing repeated then by Bhishma, which again the translation was given by Nitin. He said, Dharanat dharmeti yahu dharmo dhareti praja yah syat dharana sayuktam saha dharma eva nishchitah. Dharanat dharmeti yahu, that which upholds, that which sustains. Now I want to underline this term sustains.
So, Ami, for the benefit of the listeners, you may share the exact source of the shloka so that...
It is in Mahabharata. It comes on the 17th day of the war.
Karna Parva,
Karna Parva, 17th day of the war. During the Karna Parva, there is a beautiful story which can also be controversial, but I'll come to that. But even before that, there is this thing about sustainability. We all talk about UN SDG goals, UN Sustainability Development Goals, and we think sustainability is a modern term. Suddenly, aaj kisi ko सूझा है sustainability. No. Dharma is sustainability, and that is why Dharma is Sanatan. What can be Sanatan if it is not sustainable? But then how do we understand sustainability? Sustainability ka artha kya? Then what does it mean that we have satya, asteya, all of that is required for dharma? Why? For a system to continue, everybody in the system has a role to play. If and only if every single stakeholder of the system performs his or her kartavya, will the system survive? Think of the system as anything. Think of the system as your family. Think of the system as your organization, right? In a family, like Nitin mentioned, there is a pita, putra, putri, wife, patni. Everybody has a dharma to fulfill. Everybody has a kartavya to fulfill. Now, if one person says, my way or highway, I don't care, I will do what I want to do, will that family unit survive? Will that family unit sustain to begin with? It won't. It will break. Why did it break? Because somebody, as a stakeholder of that family unit, refused to do his or her dharma in that context, right? Extended to the samaj, extended to the civilization. We all, as a part of the civilization, that is Bharat or the Sanatan Sanskriti, have a role to play. Ours is a society which is based on kartavya, so responsibility comes before rights. Now we talk only rights. Rights cannot come in zilch, right? ऐसे कहीं से भी नहीं आ जाता. You have to earn your rights. Anyways, I don't want to get into the preachy mode. So any action, as Krishna says, यह स्यात् धारण संयुक्तम. Any action that allows, promotes sustainability is dharma. Now, if in a society, everybody, we say ahimsa paramo dharma. Why do we say ahimsa paramo dharma? In a society, if a powerful person starts killing all the weak people, what will happen? Will that society sustain at all? It won't sustain. Hence, ahimsa paramo dharma is important. Now, there is an element, there is some person, like say a terrorist, who becomes a part of the society. He starts killing whomever he wants. Can the Raja say ahimsa paramo dharma? Let the terrorist stay. Bichara headmaster ka beta, let him continue. Right? Will that allow the sustenance of the society? It won't. Right? The society will break apart. Hence, to punish that terrorist is the dharma of the Raja. Because if the Raja does not do himsa in that context there, the sustainability, the dharma, the sustainability of the society will not happen. Right? So, ahimsa also has to be understood in that context. Now, I'll take a story from Mahabharata. It's a story, I mean, it's not exactly the ideal story which we would look at, because one of those would be like when Duryodhana was born, there were all omens were suggesting this son is going to destroy the Kaurava Pandava, it's going to destroy the Bharat Vansha. These were the omens suggested. So at that time, Vidur had said that as a king, you give up this guy. You give up Duryodhana, because Duryodhana will lead to the destruction of your family. And there is this thing where Vidur says that if you have to save a village if you have to save your family by giving up your son, give up your son. If you have to save your Janapad by giving up your Gao, save the Janapad by giving up your Gao. If you have to save your Atma by giving up everything, do that. Eventually it comes to Atma, where I can lead a guilt-free existence which can eventually lead me to Swarga. वो सब तो अलग चीज़ है, but can I have a guilt-free existence that I did what I should do as a king? So actually that time Vidur had said, give up your son. So as a Pita Dharma, violate your Pita Dharma for a Raja Dharma. This is what he had said. And there are all, because as a unit in the system, we all play multiple dharmas, right? I am a putri, I am a mother, I am a wife. I have different dharmas at that point in time. Now I am also working, so I have a professional commitment towards the organization that I am a part of, right? Now think of it, say if I was working for Reliance, my son or my daughter is not well and I have to take a call that should I go to the factory, take that or stay at home. I can very well say I'll stay at home because my Matru Dharma is important. But for Adani or say even Ambani for that matter, there are lakhs of people who are dependent on him. He cannot take that call ki Arey, Akash Ambani is not well, I'll sit at home. No, he will still have to go, right? So that is how dharma has to be understood in that context as well. The most beautiful is the Gita, right? Where what is the conflict? The conflict for Arjuna is between Kutumba Dharma and Kshatriya Dharma. What is the Kshatriya Dharma? To ensure Dharma Sanstapana. What does Krishna say? Think of your Kshatriya Dharma. Don't fall for this Kutumba Dharma and all. They are very small. Larger is the Dharma Sanstapana. I mean, Gita is of course a lot deeper, but just in terms of the dharmic conflict, right? Now I'll tell you the story because it's a fun story. So what happens, I mean, not fun, but it's a very, very nuanced story of understanding of dharma. I'll just take 5 minutes to say that, yeah? So on the 17th day of the war, Karna is in full form. Because till then he had not shown any, I mean, all his valor and his boasting about how great a warrior he was hadn't happened. Dushasan had died, Shakuni had died, all the big warriors, Dronacharya, Jayadratha, in spite of so many warriors being around Jayadratha, Arjun killed him, right? So Duryodhana was also very upset कि अरे कुछ हो नहीं रहा है. Karna is like नहीं, today तो I will show. So 17th day was the day when it was the Arjun Karna war had to happen. Right? Till then it hadn't happened. So Arjun Karna war had to happen. Now what happened? Yudhishthir, Nakul and all had come, fought with Karna first. So Bhim was the only one who also defeated defeated Karna. There was like to and fro between them. But Karna definitely overpowered Yudhishthir. Yeah? So Yudhishthir was very hurt. He was injured and he goes back to his camp. When Bhim and Arjun don't see Yudhishthir, they are worried, Ki, what happened to our brother? So Bhim says, I'll wait, I'll manage the frontier, you go check on him. So Arjun goes to check on Yudhishthir. Now Yudhishthir is very hurt, he's in pain, he's also very angry that Karna did this to him. So when he sees Arjun coming, he is 100% sure that Karna is dead. Arjun is coming after killing Karna. So when Arjun comes, Yudhishthir is like, Arey Baba, you've killed Karna, I'm very happy and all that. And Arjun is like, no, I've not killed him. I've just come to check on you, ki whether you are okay or not. Now this makes Yudhishthir very, very angry. Now there is a precedent to that because do-teen bar, initially also Arjun was not killing Bhishma and all that was happening, right? So this makes Yudhishthir very angry and he says, what is the use of your Gandiv? Give it to somebody else. Yeah? It was better if Abhimanyu or Ghatotkacha were alive, they would have done something. You are of no use, right? So give your Gandiv to somebody else. And this makes Arjun very, very angry. Yeah? He takes out a sword and he runs towards Yudhishthir. And Krishna is watching all this. And Krishna is like, boss, kya kar rahe ho? What do you want to do, right? So Arjun is like, I had taken a pratigya. Now that pratigya is that I have to kill anybody who says give your guardian to somebody else. Now I have to be Satya. Satya matters. I have to be Arud on Satya. So I will have to kill my brother. And Krishna is saying, do you understand what is Satya? Do you understand what is Dharma? Do you think killing your brother because of some morkhyat eva, bale eva morkhyat, like from like a stupidity, like a child you took some pratigya, now you want to be true on that and kill your brother for that. What are you trying to do? Right? This is not. Yat bhuta hitam, as Nitin said, only when there is hitam, that is Dharma. So yat bhuta hitam, tadeva satyam. Only that is Satya when there is bhuta hita. Here what bhuta hita? Nothing, no bhuta hita. And he says, wait, I'll explain to you more. I'll explain to you this in a little more detail. And Krishna tells a story of a rishi called Kaushiki to Arjun. So Rishi Kaushiki is a very noble rishi. He has taken a pratigya that he will always speak Satya and only Satya. Satya ke siva kuch nahi kahunga. Okay. So then there are some Gauwalas ones who are running away. And they see Rishi and they tell Rishi, ki Rishi ji, some dacoits are after us. So we are going to go and hide in the jungle. You please tell them to go away somewhere else. Yeah. So Rishi doesn't say anything and then the dacoits come and they ask the Rishi, ki kidhar gaye ye log, where did the Gauwalas go? Now Rishi has a dharma sankat. All his life, this man has only spoken Satya and only Satya. Now, when Adha Pav is in the kabra, he has to take a call. Kya kare? Right? He is at the last part of his life, such a great Rishi, always spoken only the truth. What does he do now? Should he break his pratigya and lie? He says, chalo theek hai, I have taken a tapasya, I have taken a vrata of Satya, I will speak the Satya. And he says, acha wo gaon wale udhar hai, aap jao. What happens? Dacoits go, they kill the Gauwalas and khatam, baat khatam. He saved his vrata. After some years, he moves on, he does his dehatyag and he goes to Yama. And Yamaraj is like, send him to the Nark. This guy is like, Arey, mere ko Nark bhej diya. I have been only speaking Satya and only Satya and now Satya is Dharma and all that I have been told, ab kya hai? Now I am making it funny, okay? It's not written like this in Mahabharata. It's a lot more respectful. So just please excuse me for that. So then through Yama, and actually then this is what Krishna tells us, that what happened in this, an innocent life was killed, right, for no fault of theirs. Is that Satya? He calls it pratyaksha, apparent truth. Is that Satya? Because what happened? Bhuta hita was not there in that. It was only because I had taken a Satya, I kept saying Satya. But is that Satya really helping anybody? Is it helping sustainability at all? Or is it against it? Aisa hoega, and if like this innocent people keep getting killed, is it really Satya? No. Then what is Satya? So of course that doesn't mean one should keep speaking convenient untruth, right? Then it basically says, okay, that means whenever I want to save my life, I want to get out of a tricky situation, I will speak untruth. No, he also qualifies it. He says there are 3-4 instances when it is okay to lie. Vaise Satya is Paramo Dharma. Satya is Dharma. But in a situation where life is involved, innocent life is getting killed, in a situation where somebody will lose everything without any fault of theirs, in a situation where you're trying to save your own life, you can speak asatya, because there that asatya is for a better cause, is for hita. And hence asatya is actually satya, and in that situation satya becomes asatya, right? So this is the contextual understanding of Dharma and Satya, while keeping in mind that it is not for convenient escape. Ki I don't want to go to office, pet dukh raha hai. Nahi. It is not that. That will lead to what Nitin said there, papam. That is papam only. But in a situation where hita, life is involved, you can. And this is the contextual understanding of dharma, of satya, ahimsa, all of that, which we need to keep in mind. So I don't know if completely answered your question, but I spoke a lot.
One interesting tidbit I would add to that example is in the enumeration of the Samanya Dharma in Manusmriti, ahimsa comes first. Ahimsa, satyam, asteyam, in shaucham, indriya nigram. So ahimsa takes precedence because of its order in the enumeration over satya. So these are the very minute things only we will understand when you deeply study the text, and not just in a translation once in a while. So this is a teaching as well. When it's question of ahimsa, that takes precedence over question of satya, asatya.
So yes, we've had that very beautiful discussion about the core dharma and the leash with which we can deviate from the dharma in those exceptional conditions, and that leash is very important. And to bring this complexity into a narrative, right, Nitin? So we have lost that complex view of our own past. So we've started viewing it again in, as you said, in that Abrahamic lens about whether it goes according to so how does India become a Vishwaguru if we cannot take this kind of stance? Why the hell should we take a stance when it doesn't concern us? Right. So to bring back that civilizational outlook so that we can build a civilizational narrative for ourselves. Right. So what would be in quick couple of lines, what would be your process that an individual should follow and a government should follow? I'm going to come back with the same question to you also.
I think it is a very complex thing and it cannot be done in a day or two, definitely. At an individual level, each of us have to put in effort to recover meaning in our own lives. And each of us have to involve in our Shastras, specifically Itihasa Puranas, I would say, because that is most easily approachable and the real gems are in those stories. Unfortunately, there was a time when we used to hear Ramayana, Mahabharata from our nanis, dadis and all, ajis and all. But what I meant, unfortunately, we do not have it today. We were fortunate at one time, but unfortunate today that we don't have it. Because the parents themselves don't know those stories, then they are not unable to teach. So first, parents have to get educated themselves, and then they can teach that to their students. I mean, these stories, they had, for example, today, most of the students, I see a lot of this, my daughter sees these cartoons and all. They do not have any meaning behind it. That is the problem. Even our Panchatantra has meaning, just one example is, we all know that Panchatantra is a story and the animals speaking to each other. But Panchatantra in our Hindu classification is a Niti Shastra. It's a text which is teaching us not just Dharma, but also Dharma or living in a practical sense. How you live, how you negotiate with reality. And the framework of it is predator-prey framework, which is actually how the reality works. So it is teaching us how to actually live in them, and it is actually a teaching for the kings and the policymakers and the statecraft. That is what Panchatantra actually is. We don't realize this, but that is why we always end up making mistakes. So we have to recreate this at the individual level. First of all, we need to study.
Swadhyaya.
We need to Swadhyaya, and we need to reflect upon. So I say for practicing Hindu, there are 3 pillars: Shraddha, Swadhyaya. There are 4 pillars: Shraddha, Swadhyaya, Sadharana or Samanya Dharma, that is Sadachara. And finally is I just kept forgetting. Finally, whatever it is, we have to do this. We have to have Shraddha towards our Shastras, we have to study them, Swadhyaya, and we have to practice them. So at an individual level, this has to happen. We have to inculcate our next generation from the very small age into our own community practices, our individual practices, introduce them to our Kuladevata, Ishtadevata, do some kind of puja, something or the other. And at a social level also, we need to take initiatives, discussions like this, more courses and many other things that can happen, wherein we delve deeper, we try to recover the drishti. And at the government level, see, our education system is completely mess. Now, it's a good thing that IKS or Indic knowledge systems is being given importance and some universities are introducing it. But still, you see how the things are currently. All Indic knowledge traditions have been combined and put under one department called Sanskrit department. And now perhaps we will have an Indic knowledge department. See, that is not it should be. How it should be, we should not be studying anthropology, sociology and all, which are categories derived from the West. We should be studying everything about life from our own categories. And we can subsume the modern categories into our own categories. Now the reverse is happening. We are subsuming Indian categories into Western categories. Like if I do a MA philosophy or a PhD in philosophy, I am studying Hindu darshanas not the way they should be studied, but by subsuming them under the category of epistemology and ethics and all those things. We need to study our shastras as a darshana in our own categories and then subsume the Western knowledge into our system. So the reverse has to happen. And we need to revive certain traditions. For example, because my major work of research is Dharma Shastra and Smritis. The Dharma Shastra tradition was decimated during the colonial times. That needs to be revived. Why it is needed to be revived is, for example, take the recent decision about raising the age of marriage, or the discussion that is every day happening about abortion and all those things. In all these issues, the only arguments we see is the arguments that is made by activists in the West. We copy the problem, we paste the problem and the solution as well. The same thing is in the West, in the abortion issue, there are two camps, pro-life, pro-choice. The same thing you will hear in India also. There is pro-life, pro-choice. What about Indic drishti on the abortion? And how do we arrive at Indic drishti on this? This is this social issue and all issues that is concerned about society, socio-political culture, etc. It comes purely under Dharma Shastra tradition. The political aspects also comes under Artha Shastra tradition. So we need to revive these traditions. We need to revive study of our Smriti texts and our Shastras and not to throw them into dustbins of history as we are currently doing. When we revive them, I can give you the example because I have done the work. I have written a series of essays titled Abortion, a Dharmic Perspective. It was published in Indica Today magazine, wherein I try to arrive at a independent inquiry of the issue of abortion based on our Shastric drishti. Similar thing has to be done on all issues. We think that our texts are tombs from the past, artifacts of the past, which are not relevant today. But that approach itself is alien to us. That is not our approach. Our approach is that all the shastras are relevant here and now. Because the Purusharthas are relevant here and now. The Dharma is relevant, the Artha is relevant, Kama is relevant. And all the traditions is no longer present. We do not have a living Kama Shastra tradition. We do not have a living Dharma Shastra tradition. Artha Shastra, there has been some form of revival, some form of understanding. When I mention the revival, I have a specific thing in mind. It is not my claim that we need to go back in history and create a society which is a carbon copy of how it was in the past. No. That is impossible. That is impracticable. We have to accept that whatever the reasons, but now we are living what we are living. So we are a post-colonial society, but we are in our minds we are still a colonized society, and this is a reality. So we cannot recreate pre-colonial society. We need to create a new society based on our drishti. So first we need to recover meaning, recover our tradition, and then using those frameworks, the knowledge and the teachings, we then contextualize those teachings to our needs, to negotiate with today's reality. We need to ask questions about ethical questions such as cloning, artificial intelligence, the robots, and every issue we can actually tackle from the framework of Dharma. We can do it We just have to do it. That is what I mean by reviving the tradition, because the dharma, the dharmic view is not on the table of discussion of any policy makers or any social discussions or any, even in public consciousness. We say that I am dharmic, I am this, that and all. Even on the Hindu side, among all of us here, when we speak about contemporary issues, we unconsciously switch. Inside our mind, there is a change in the switch, change in the button, and we switch into modern narratives, modern constructs. Like today, for example, if we have to justify the certain mythological aspects for philosophy, then we have to justify in scientific terms. Where is the scientific proof? If Shiva becomes some kind of black energy matter, this was a statement in the first edition of Mangaluru Litfest itself. Somebody had asked me this. Oh, that Shiva is a black matter and
Dark matter.
dark matter. What? Yeah. So I need to brush my science.
That's okay.
So see, we don't need to do that. We need to define ourselves. Again, we need to build our narrative, our story. So I think the government has an important role, yes, but even private institutions, like for example our Indica Academy that we both are part of, I think it's doing phenomenal work in this direction, that so many centers, through so many grants, so many conferences, we are making a humble attempt. And similarly, we need to do more of it across the country by different organizations at individual, social and other things. So we need to see it from a civilization perspective. There is a civilizational battle going on. From narrative is one aspect, our life and death is on the line on the other aspect, and they are not unconnected. See, I like to see, I'll just take a few more minutes, a little digression, but I think it's necessary. Currently, if you have to speak about Hindu society, we can speak about Hindu identity in 5 concentric circles. I like to use the Vedantic Panchakosha as just a metaphor for this. At the outermost layer is we have the political Hindu, or what I call political Hindu. I mean, there is a recognition that we are a Hindu in the eyes of our enemies, whether we believe in our Devata or not, whether we are atheists or whatever it is. But our enemy sees us as a kafir, as a Hindu. So this is a political Hindu. At one stage, I was also like that. And then inner layer become cultural Hindus who are culturally aware. I mean, they go to temples, they go to tirtha sthalas and all. But they may or may not be politically aware. They will still go vote for a certain party which has been very problematic to Indian history. And then you come into even inner, then we have this practicing Hindus, what I call, that is, who practice, who are not merely culturally aware that once in a year they do some puja and all. They, on a daily basis, they are rooted in Dharma, they do the Nitya Anushtana, whatever it is, based on their family practices. And at the very core is, we have what I call as Siddhas or Acharyas and Gurus, who are the true core, who are actually living the life that Shastras mandates. So they are at the very core. So the core is very small. The outermost layer is the huge portion. And the narrative war that is happening is actually now, it's not with the enemies. There is a war within the society itself, between the core and the outermost. This is an unfortunate thing, because this layered by layered society can only survive, can only sustain if the outermost layer accepts that the core is important for as a civilizational vision, even when they do not accept certain tenets, but they will train their guns outside of the circle, not inside towards the center. But the reverse is happening today. And this kind of social setup, civilizational layer by setup is present in Jewish society also, and they are coping up with it in a better manner, that they are outside secular communist Jews, they are aligned with the core practicing very orthodox Jews, even though they themselves are not orthodox. We need to develop that in here also, instead of attacking again and again our own Shastras, calling our Shastras as orthodox, rejecting our Shastras as sidelining the Smritis like Manusmriti as artifacts of past which has no relevance today, or training the guns on them. Let the core who believe in them practice it freely without any disturbance. Let others practice also freely without any disturbance. What they don't believe, that's okay. So again, so this narrative, this realistic day-to-day thing also matters when we speak about narrative, because my narrative may not be same about another person, another activist within the Hindu fold also. So the only way to harmonize it is through this layered wise analysis, and we need to work upon all these areas that when we have to rebuild the narrative, it is a multidimensional thing, and not single person cannot do everything. We all have to I have written one article called Agenda for Hindu Society. We can just search it on the Google, wherein I laid out what individuals can do, because most of the things we cannot do as an individual, but there are many things that we can do as an individual. We need to find our niche, what we can do, and then just go ahead and do it.
Sure, thank you for that. And Ami, if you can quickly give your closing remarks before, maybe we can take a couple of questions from the audience before we close down. Okay.
So Nitin has given a very comprehensive answer. The only thing I'll add to that is, the current narrative for India, it's not as if we don't have a narrative. We have a narrative. Can anybody tell me what is that narrative in 2 words? It's spoken all the time. Now there is the fear in the minds of certain elites that XXX is in danger.
That is idea of India.
Idea of India is in danger, right? That is what they're saying. So idea of India is actually a narrative that was set for us, right? Now what is the issue with idea of India? Idea of India, a lot of us do not relate to it. Although a lot of things in idea of India, actually they tell us, you guys are like this. You guys, everything goes, you assimilated Musliman, you assimilated Christians, everything you did, you have to continue to be like this. कोई एक गाल पे झापड़ मारेगा, आप दूसरा गाल आगे कर लो. This is the idea of India, right? And you continue to be like that. Why? Because ahimsa parmo dharma, without bringing into aspect the nuance of it. Why did we believe in that? Because we didn't know actually what the idea of India was, what the idea of Bharat is, right? Why didn't we not know that? Because we were disconnected from our past. Why were we disconnected from our past? For a very good reason. We were under economic slavery for so long, right? When खाने को पैसा नहीं है, in Gujarati we say भूख्या पेटे भजन न थाए. If you are hungry, you can't do bhajan. Yeah. So first you have to fill your stomach. So what does Chanakya say? Chanakya says sukha se moolam dharma, dharma se moolam artha, artha se moolam rajya. Rajya is a kshatra bhav, the power, right? So you have to get into power. We've made that start, somewhat, yeah. All caveats put in place, somewhat. We have at least become aware that we need to have somebody in the power who can talk about our interest. Thoda bahut hi kyun now, at least that start has been made. Arthasya moolam rajyam. Now, of course you need power, but you also need economic power. What did China do? Why are we talking about China today? Why is China indispensable? Because of its economic prowess. Right? So can we ignore the economy part? No. We need to have economy. We need to have a strong economy. We need to be prosperous. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha, artha matters. Right? We need to be working on that as well. And while we do all that, we have to go back to our texts. We have to develop the intellectual horsepower, the shraddha, the spiritual horsepower, to say, acha, let us at least know what our texts are telling us. When they say ahimsa paramo dharma, do I understand in what context it is said? When they tell me dharma nirpeksh, should I not be out there on the road and screaming, what dharma nirpeksh are you talking about? Although in the constitution it is sampradaya nirpeksh, it is not dharma nirpeksh. I explained to you the meaning of dharma. Now think of it, we are saying we don't care about sustainability and all that. Dharma nirpeksh is what? Right? So let us at least challenge that, and I am extremely happy that these challenges are happening now. JSD's book, India that is Bharat, got so much traction. You think it would have been possible maybe even 10 years back? No. So the change is happening. Here we are discussing civilizational narratives today. Yeah? Who am I? Such a small person, ek book likha hai. Why will my view matter? But you are all here to listen to it, right? There is this curiosity to say, acha, let's understand. I think this cannot just end at curiosity though. We have to do our purushartha at an individual level as well, ensure that we know what we represent as the dharmic civilization, ensure people around us, our children get that transmission of knowledge happens there, while ensuring that physically also we are strong, economically also we strive. We are Lakshmi Pujak. For us, making money in the dharmic way is not a sin. Poverty is never glorified. Right, we have to remember that. So work on all those aspects. It's not easy, but it is definitely doable. Our ancestors did it, we can do it. So I'm very optimistic actually about this.
So thank you for that note. And from both the panelists, we had. I'm so happy that we had. The Purusharthas, 4 Purusharthas. So that is an excellent response to the only Artha Kama model that especially more than Kama driving Artha model that has been put out by the West, where consumption, Kama is not just sensual pleasure, but consumption is driving the economy. That is, Kama is driving the Artha, which is totally unsustainable, which leads to Adharma. And we are seeing the West break down, on the verge of breaking down. Right, and that way I guess we are actually in a safe position where we are seeing an experiment fail, so that we don't completely get into that. Right, so thank you Ami for that, and thank you Nitin. Maybe we'll take 1 or 2 questions max, before closing. Yes, sir.
This 5 lakh years old Sanatana Dharma has following problems. First is we have crores of deities. We have lakhs of Atmik Gurus like Shirdi Sai Baba, Raghavendra Swami and many others. We have 1,400 scriptures like Bhagavad Gita. We have crores of words of wisdom or phrases or sermons of wisdom. We have 6,443 castes and subcastes. We have got 2 crore confused spiritual preachers and gurus. We have got 100 crore spineless Sanatanis. 22% are anti-Manu, Manusmriti. 20% are anti-Hindu, and the rest are useless. What is the solution for all these problems? First question. Second is there any vaccination against war virus, which is haunting humanity for millions of years? It was not the World War I that happened in 1914 or second in 1939. The first World War took place in Ramayana, the second World War took place in Mahabharata. So these world wars are taking place for years together. How do we stop this? The third question is, Macaulay destroyed education system. Secularism destroyed Indian political, social, and economic system. What is the solution? The fourth question is, what is the role of God in the entire human system?
I presume the question was to me. So I think the first problem you stated is not a problem at all. You consider diversity as a problem, but I say diversity is our greatest weapon. Diversity is our greatest advantage. Diversity is the greatest heritage that we have received. Because why? Because no 2 person is same. I am not same as you. I am not same as her. I am not same as anybody else. Because my thoughts, my temperaments, my competencies, my capacities, this will be different from every other person, including my own parents, my own children, my own wife, everything. This being the reality, there cannot be no solution, straight-jacket solution which fits everything. There is no one size of a shoe which fits everybody, right? So all this diversity of Upasana Margas, the diversity of the Devatas, it may be 100 crore, it may be even 1,100 crore, I don't mind. Because all of them will cater to somebody on the planet, and that is enough. Because as they say, there is a verse, Akasham patitam toyam yatha gacchati sagaram sarvadeva namaskritam keshavam pratigacchati. All the names, all the upasana paths ultimately lead to the ultimate reality. And just like all the waters from the sky ultimately go to join the ocean. So that is as far as the first question is concerned. And I think regarding the education system, it is true that Macaulay, colonial and post-colonial, we have not really adopted or recovered or even attempted to recover our drishti, our system. Our entire system was more or less destroyed. But there is still time, we can still recover. That is, I am an optimist in this, that if we put in effort today, it may not happen in a day or two, it will happen perhaps in a generation or two, but if we put efforts today, then we can build our own new system, definitely. On the question of war, I think the question itself is a bit problematic. Because there is no utopian solution. The utopia is not possible wherein everything is hunky and dory and everywhere peace is there. That is the biggest lesson that Mahabharata teaches. That the violence is ingrained in the very society. That not just Mahabharata, even Panchatantra, even Manusmriti, every other Shastras teaches very simple thing, that Vyavaharika Dasha, that is this transactional universe, is by definition embedded with violence. When we kill a mosquito, that is violence. When you kill a cockroach, that is violence. When we cook food, that is violence. It does not matter whether you are a meat eater or a vegetarian. Even when you are a vegetarian, when you are lighting a fire, you are lighting a cook, there is so many bacteria which die. So there is violence. When you do agriculture, there is violence. Forget about wars. There is violence in our everyday life. So contrary to Buddhist and Jaina ideal, Hindu Dharma says ahimsa paramo dharma. But what is that parama again? It is paramartha satya. Ahimsa, true ahimsa is possible only in moksha. So that is the teaching of Mahabharata. You take the path of Shuka Maharaj and fly away from the samsara through attaining the Brahmatma Aikya Jnanam, the Vedanta Jnanam, that I am Brahman. Then there will be ahimsa. Only that is the true ahimsa, absolute ahimsa, because there is no samsara then. There is no action then. Where there is action, there is himsa, because action by definition is himsa. It embeds himsa. So what our Shastras teach is not to shy away from violence. It's not, and neither does it teach to perform genocide. What it teaches is to negotiate with reality, negotiate with violence, build a harmonious society where violence is minimum to where it is really necessary, and all kinds of unnecessary violence, all kinds of genocidal violence, all kinds of chaotic violence are kept at bay. How? Through the Kshatriya Dharma. Through a state which has a monopoly on violence, it prevents all other kinds of anarchical violence. But that state has to be rooted in dharma. That is, she gave a quote about Sukasya Mulaha, Dharma Dharmasya Mulaha, Artha Arthasya Mulaha, Rajyasya Mulaha, Indriya Nigraha. Indriya Jaya, I think, right? Yeah. Why this Indriya Jaya then? Who is a Kshatriya king who can control that power? One who is Indriya Jaya. That is, one who does not use violence for his personal gains. Because he just felt like it. King gets up in the morning, yeah, I like killing people today. I will kill this one to this group of people. No, he does not do it. Indriya Jaya. One who has overcome, who has transcended, who has gained control over his ishta, likes and dislikes. Such a person, such a state, violence is used minimum, in a restrained way, and only where it is necessary as a punishment. Danda. Manusmriti says the danda is the greatest power, and if it is not used in a proper way, then that king will go to Naraka. The king or the state has monopoly of violence, but it also has a responsibility over how it uses the violence. Nobody is outside the karma phala pattern, and that is the greatest vision of Dharma, that even if you do not become prosecuted by the state, you think that you have escaped, but karma will catch you up with you. It is inevitable. You do action, it will catch up with you, and that is why violence cannot be removed from the Vyavaharika Satya, because our karma and karma phala is such that you do good, you get good, but you do bad, you will also get punished. That punishment, that suffering is there, that dvandva is there. It is embedded in the samsara. So only way that true ahimsa as a paramad, why it is called parodharma, it is for this reason that ahimsa in a true sense, in an absolute sense, is a characteristics of moksha. So what does it mean? Does it mean that I do not practice ahimsa in everyday life? No. We have to practice ahimsa to the best possible manner. For a grihastha, the definition of ahimsa is different from a sannyasi. Sannyasi cannot cook. Sannyasi cannot do many activities. He cannot do yajna. All this because he has taken ahimsa as a Mahabharata. But grihastha has to involve in a lot of ahimsic activities such as agriculture and many other things. But we can, as a choice, we can minimize that. By our choice, we can minimize that ahimsa, and that itself is a great dharma. So the ultimate goal is to reach that ultimate moksha, which is true ahimsa. I hope I answered all the
That's
questions.
a very holistic answer, actually. I think the lady there had, and this would be the last question. And fortunately, the panelists are available till today evening, so please feel free to approach them and discuss with them after this.
Okay, ma'am. My question is, for example, as far as Dharma, husband and wife should be respecting each other and should be true to oneself. Like they should be true to oneself without having an affairs or something like that. That is a Dharma, especially Hindu Dharma when it comes to Dharma. But if you see that upcoming or current judgment by a Supreme Court or a High Court or a District Court, it says that if two people are okay with having an affair, it's not a crime. There is a judgment in few cases. In such situation, there is a conflict between Dharma and the current judgment or current reality. For example, parents should correct the child at the cost of, even if it is needed, the parents can hit one or scold, or even teachers can do according to Dharma. But the reality is, parents are not supposed to hit the child, or teachers are not supposed to hit the child, or even scolding. If at all they do that, if at all the child calls 1098, it will be an allegation. So it's like a Dharma versus reality. In this case, how can it be sorted out?
Let the judgment come, and they say two people, if they're okay with affair, go, let them do an affair. That does not mean that everybody is compelled to go out and do an affair, right? Which means at an individual level, if I care for my family dharma, if I care for my kutumba dharma, I follow what I need to do, right? To expect that, because what we are expecting is that let state impose dharma as I want it. That would be ideal, right? That would be ideal to get to that level where everything that the state does is in accordance with dharma. But we are not living in that state right now. What is the state? Where we go back to apat dharma, right? But that, again, it does not stop me from following my dharma. Why do I care for everything else? That's one. Second, there is another dharma I have. To make my voice heard about such things that happen, right? Not that one or not specific to that example. But if there is something where we see, as I said in the previous time when I was speaking, I said dharma nirpekshta. They said we want dharma nirpekshta. We said haan chalo de do. Isn't it then also as our responsibility as Sanatan Dharmis to say, arey no, this doesn't make sense. Did we challenge it at all, right? That much dharma, that much kartavya we have, right? Why do we want to say that let everybody else do everything? No, let's start with our own selves, right? And I'll just add one thing to what the previous question had asked, right? Why do we assume that Sanatan Dharma is a steady state? It is not. It is a cyclical view that we've seen, right? Civilizations go through these cycles for various reasons. Eventually, we reach a stage where we as the part of the civilization have to decide and say, okay, I'm going to break out of this misery and define a new steady state for me going forward. Probably we have reached that stage because we also talk about in Sanatana Dharma of Sarjan and Visarjan and Sarjan and Visarjan, right? So Visarjan also happens. Hota hai, we go down. Then we have to come up again. Why so much pessimism? Together we'll make it happen. And we've made that start. So, yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you, Nitin, Ami. It was a very lively and deep delving discussion, and thank you, audience. And just by the number of people standing in the end of the room, it says how interesting it has been. Thank you, Mangaluru Lit Fest team.
I now request Ashwini Desai, trustee of Bharat Foundation, to hand over the mementos to our eminent speakers.